I can honestly tell you that I did not have Dale getting caught in the concrete walls of the town pool on this week's From Bingo.
Ooh, that's a bingo!
From Victor's reunion with his dad, an interesting discovery in the Colony House basement, and a trip back to the bottle tree, this episode had plenty of new surprises, which means new clues and theories. For those of you new to these videos, this is not a recap of the episode, but a deep dive into the show's biggest mysteries.
You guys can thank me later.
As always, I've left timestamps below so you can see all the topics we'll be covering. Now grab your medication and make sure to like and subscribe, this is gonna be wild. From never ceases to surprise me with the most up shit, so Dale getting caught in the concrete pool after stepping into the bottle tree was a truly gruesome surprise. But his death also gives us some valuable insight into how these trees operate. We already know from Victor that the trees move, so it can be deduced that if they move, where they lead to will as well. As of now, the only person who really knows where these trees lead is the boy in white. He was the one to direct Boyd to the dungeon at the end of season 1 and helped Victor navigate through them his entire life. It was Victor who saved Julie's life in the season 1 attack of Colony House by putting her through the tree. He knows how dangerous these trees can be. In episode 104, Victor teaches Ethan about the trees, stating you have to be careful or you could end up inside of a mountain, or in Dale's case, a pool. We even see him throw a rock into one of these trees, which a few moments later falls out of the sky. So I'm sure Victor must have known it was safe for Tabitha to go through the bottle tree when she went through it at the end of season 2. If you look at this picture in Victor's room, you'll see what appears to be one of those Ankui kids, but it's what's behind that I find interesting. It looks like a rudimentary map that Victor has created showing where the different faraway trees lead and how they're connected to one another. There are even Victor's own version of what could either be coordinates or some sort of mapping system. We have green triangles for trees, X's could either be where they end up or could be where he buried something. The X symbol is the same as the one he had in his notebook denoting where he buried his suitcase. Outside the bottle tree, Jade and Tabitha end up opening some of the bottles to reveal 4 numbers, which Jade believes are dates. In the season 1 finale, Boyd read one of these numbers from the bottle tree, which had the date 1864, a date which also appears carved into the lighthouse in Tabitha's nightmare an episode earlier. I've long theorized that these dates are cycles which repeat. New townsfolk arrive, there's some sort of big massacre, and the cycle restarts. However, there's a new bit of information that puts a little wrench in this theory. According to Tabitha, one of the dates reads 2659. If this is indeed a date, it would be over 600 years in the future. I still think the cycles theory works even with this new bit of information. What if what we're watching in present day is but one point in a long timeline that loops into infinity? We do see an infinity symbol on the cave drawing. It's also implied that the boy in white can see into the future. He was the one who told Victor to dig 7 graves before the attack on Colony House, which killed 7 people. So if I were to make a guess on what's going on here, there's this battle between good and evil that goes on for eternity in these cycles. Keep in mind that the creators of From also worked on Lost, which had this huge theme of good versus evil in the characters of Jacob and the Man in Black. Is it any coincidence then that this show has a character named the Boy in White? I really hope that they take all the bottles and their respective dates to see if there are any patterns. As Jade says,
It only looks like chaos until you understand the pattern.
Jade believes that this tree might have a connection with the symbol he's been obsessing over. He tells Tabitha about the Ankui kids on slabs of stone staring up into the sky. This leads me to believe that the clue to mapping out this whole system might be the stars, and that the symbol is some sort of constellation found in this universe. Is it any coincidence that when Jade plays the violin in season 2, the song he plays is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? It was twinkling stars Victor would think of when people screamed at night, and the name of the high school / elementary school looks as though it's called Celestial. I also want to give a shout out to user Fen Harrell on the From Facebook fan page, who noticed that these dates also align with significant dates in astronomy and timekeeping, which you can pause to take note of. I also thought it was really interesting that Henry brings up the fact there's this big motel sign but no motel. I can't help but think there's a connection between the missing motel and the faraway tree's ability to teleport things. Obviously, a motel is too large to go through one of those holes, but it's something to think about. Unfortunately, there's not much new when it comes to Jasper. All we really learn this episode is that Jasper is in the tunnels, but before Sarah and Victor can venture off to them, Victor requires supplies. We've seen Jasper twice before in these tunnels, once in Jade's hallucination and the other time when Tabitha and Victor escaped them. With the arrival of his father, Victor merely states they'll look for Jasper later. Victor's reunion with Henry is arguably the most emotional moment of the episode. Both feel like they let the other down for not being able to find the other. When reunited, Victor says he tried to get home, and Henry tells Donna that losing his family was almost too much to bear, as we get a close-up of this rope that looks like a noose. I interpreted this as a nod to him almost killing himself with the pain of losing his family. The way he coped with this pain was to trick himself into believing they were dead and gone. Victor also mentions that he told himself everything that happened before the town was a dream, as a way to cope with the loss, hence why he has no pictures of his father. I also want to briefly mention this line Sarah says.
I would give anything to feel like a good person again.
I think they're setting up Sarah for some sort of redemption, especially after we see the dirty look she gets while stepping into Colony House. Episode 305 deals with the aftermath of Tabitha's arrival, and part of this aftermath includes the shocking retrieval of Randall's still alive but mangled body. Randall spends most of this episode confined to his bed. However, he hasn't forgotten that it was Boyd who left him to die so he could save the others. Obviously, Boyd feels terrible about this, and Randall doesn't seem like the forgiving type, so it'll be interesting how their strained relationship will manifest going forward. The two big questions that remain are, why did the monsters want Randall, and why did they let him live? There are two main things that differentiate Randall from the other townspeople. First, he was one of the 3 individuals who succumbed to the evil entity's cicadas, so there might be a connection there that goes beyond what we know. Second, he's been an all-around asshole and nuisance since his arrival in Season 2. Additionally, by choosing him, it sets up a confrontation between him and Boyd, and we all know how this evil entity loves making its townspeople suffer. By keeping Randall around, it leaves more opportunity for that suffering. But it's Boyd who gives the best explanation for why the monsters let Randall live. That scar on his face will be a permanent reminder to the townsfolk that even during the day, the monsters will always be there. It's a way for them to remember what is coming at night. The monsters have a history of letting other townspeople live after committing terrible murders, such as letting Boyd live after the death of Tien Chen. Julia and Elgin continue their friendship after a close call with a fire shovel. Julia's gone into Fatima's room to steal some weed. I mean, it's not like she needs it with a baby on the way, but knowing her this season, anything is fair game. Weed is the only thing that stops the screams that have been taking over her head since coming out of the evil entity's trance, but it's really this overarching sense of fear that she's most concerned about. Elgin opens up to Julie about this drowned kimono woman who he says he sees even while awake. Initially, he thought she was trying to hurt him, but really it wants his help. It's interesting that he mentions his grandmother here, who he states would interpret this as being visited by the Archangel Gabriel. Gabriel was known as the deliverer of divine messages, which would suggest this kimono woman has something important to tell him. I should also mention what appears to be a ventriloquist dummy on the TV in the background. It's really hard to make out, but let me know if you think this is Jasper. Julie also expands on this idea that the town's purpose is to generate suffering. Something out there feeds off it. This is why her mother was brought back, to give the townspeople hope. And as the entity said to Boyd in the Season 2 finale, hope creates suffering. Henry perfectly encapsulates this feeling when he states,
It was the hardest part. That little bit of hope. That was the part I couldn't bear.
in the Colony House basement, there are a few things I want to point out. The stone archway here looks similar to the one found in Miranda's paintings. Also this yellow piece of clothing, but this looks more like a shirt than a jacket. I couldn't really see anything fishy with Elgin's photo, but I do wonder if we'll see Julie's since we don't get to see it after it was developed. I could totally see a glimpse of that kimono woman being found behind her. I also wonder if there's any link between this camera and Christopher. It was a Polaroid of Christopher that Jade found way back in Season 1. This episode also gave me red flags about Marielle, and it's not so much one thing in particular that raises concern for me, but a series of things as follows. She's the only one of the 3 townsfolk who hasn't expressed her feelings after being taken over by the evil entity. She was the one tasked with saving Nikki's life and says something very weird in this scene with Christy, that she removed the bullet and stabilized Nikki, but the next moment she was dead. Kinda strange. She was also the one who gave Fatima this mystery medicine. Is it any coincidence that after Fatima started taking this that she started to eat those rotten crops? Nikki also happened to be the one who was mean to Fatima, then a few days later is dead with Marielle watching over. To top it off, Marielle is the one looking after Randall, the second of 3 people that the entity had taken over. Is there a connection here, or is it all coincidence? Kenny mentions to Boyd the mysterious thing lurking outside the settlement at night. For 2 nights, Kenny and the others heard thumping coming from outside their log hut. Kenny mentioning it here suggests this will be an ongoing mystery in the episodes to come, and that we're not done with this settlement. I'm inclined to think this isn't a monster. We never hear it talking like the monsters do, plus we don't know if monsters can even reach inside this settlement due to these weird totems. Speaking of which, this carving of Randall's looks a lot like some of those heads on these totems. There's also the drone he planned to give his nephew for his birthday. I wonder if he's been using this to spy on either the monsters or other townspeople. This notebook and pencil here suggest he's keeping tabs on something or someone. I wonder if Boyd will take a look at it and see what Randall is up to. Fatima is caught eating those rotten crops and divulges to Ellis that she thinks something is wrong with the baby. I'm sure this will fuel Ellis into doing something drastic, such as going through a faraway tree to get help. But what I'm curious about is if she told him about the blood. Now you guys know I always have my eye on Tilly because she is extremely suspicious.
Why would they do that?
First, we still don't have any follow-up on our tarot card reading of Fatima, which I'm a little disappointed with. We see her cleaning up Nikki's blood stain, and she's the one who alerts Henry and Donna to the town meeting and sits behind Fatima at said meeting. This meeting is definitely a powder keg of emotion, with most of the townspeople wanting to go through the faraway tree, but Boyd warning caution. I did enjoy his I told you so moment at the end where he shows what happens to those who don't listen. Boyd was even close to mercy killing Dale before he succumbs to his injuries. I also found it pretty funny that the episode ends on Donna's reaction to Dale's death when the 2 actors are married to each other in real life. But now I turn it over to you. What did you think of this week's episode? I want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember, Daddy loves you very much.